But what they need to do is they need to know why they go on stage. What that I mean is they need to have a very clear mission. I have 3 questions I ask at every single pitch training. It's how much time do you have? Who's your target audience? And what are you trying to achieve? If they have that clear mission, then they can build a pitch. And if they have that mission in their head and they've understood it, then they can pitch. But the worst thing are people who just have a pitch, they learn off by heart, and they try and do a show without knowing what they're trying to achieve. It takes a while to understand that, but once they've understood it, they're good to go.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About Tech. It's my great pleasure to introduce you today to my dear friend, Daniel Cronin. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Daniel, you are a serial entrepreneur. You do a lot of things, but more than just understanding what you do today, we're interested in your entrepreneurial journey as a serial entrepreneur. I know that takes a little bit, but please go ahead.
Sure, thanks for having me. It's actually not straight cut. The story is, I think I've always been interested in things, whatever that means. And I've always loved taking things apart and trying to understand why things work. And I've always loved stories, but I never knew why. And I was very bad in school and I didn't know what to do. So I did what everyone does if you have no idea what to do. I went to business school. I enjoyed myself in business school. It took me 20 semesters to get my degree. So there you go. I know a lot about university. And I was always doing things. At the same time, throughout my entire life, I've had major anxiety issues, specifically being on stage. Like the biggest scare in my life was, and very often still is speaking in front of people. But the thing is, I have a bit of a brain damage probably, is I like doing things that scare me. So while being in business school, I started doing like really weird jobs. And one of them was working as an extra on film sets. And you have like the actors in the middle, and then you have decoration, and at the back you have the extras. And I was right at the back, close to having an anxiety attack. And as an extra, you essentially stand around, do nothing. And someone came to me and said, "You're very good at this." I said, "Well, okay, good." So in a moment of madness, I went to acting school. So I was in business school and acting school. And then in business school, I actually quite enjoyed myself there once I found my focus, which was marketing and market research. And then I tried to combine the two of them, which was a thesis about TV advertising. I was absolutely not interested in it, but it kind of made sense. And then something happened. My phone broke and I needed a new phone. And I didn't buy a phone the way, let's say, a tech person would buy it, like the one with the best processors. I bought it the way a marketer would. And I bought the shiniest phone, which was one of the earliest iPhones. And then I was intrigued and I thought, like, this is amazing. And I ditched the topic of my thesis, went to my professor and said, "Look, I got to write about this new thing. Let's call it mobile marketing." And he was like, "No." I was like, "But I got it." So after 3 days, we agreed on that I could write it. And I had a survey and I'd hoped to get 50 participants, but I ended up getting 753. And one of them was a company builder. And I have to admit, I had no idea what a company builder was. They were called i5 Invest. You of course know them. And they were looking to spin out a company out of an unknown Austrian startup called Runtastic that would develop and market mobile apps. And they were looking for someone who kind of brought a bit of marketing know-how in, and that was me. And that's how my entrepreneurial journey started. I never heard of startups before. I had this entrepreneurial thing in me, but I'd never met people who actually did. And suddenly I was surrounded by all these people who were just like, "We don't know how stuff's going to work. Let's just try it out. Let's go for it." And that was it. And then a lot of things happened in parallel because obviously I can speak English because I'm half Irish, half German. I'd gone to acting school and there were 2 guys doing startup events and they were like, "Dude, you can speak English?" I was like, "You've been on stage before?" I was like, "Yeah. Do you want to host one of our startup events?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like 34 people and it was the predecessor of the Pioneers Festival. And from then on, I started hosting events. And then the next thing happened. Center of every event is people pitching. And people would go off stage and go like, "Dude, how did the pitch go?" And I go like, "I think okay. Try this, try that." Because at the same time, I was pitching every day as an entrepreneur with my company. And I started giving people feedback on that. And fast forward to today, I've worked on thousands of pitches and ended up doing that as well. Ended up doing TV as well because I love the whole pitching thing. And then also something happened in parallel. I know it seems also confusing, but it all made sense at the end. Myself and a couple other people noticed there was no common voice for startups in Austria. So we were like, might as well do that, and co-founded something called AustrianStartups, which is a non-profit to make entrepreneurship as common as skiing in Austria, and a lot of other things.
I know. So you have become basically the voice not only of the Austrian startup ecosystem, but you're all over the place, also in international startup events. As a pitch doctor, you're
Pitch professor, please.
Pitch professor.
Pitch professor.
Pitch
I actually
professor.
got that title.
You got the
I
title
got it.
from a university?
Yes. It's a
Okay.
true story. And I have a bust with my head on it, and it's in my office, and people think, look, he's so full of himself. He's got a bust of himself. No, I was actually given it, and it's a diploma which says like honorary title of the pitch professor. So I didn't make that up. I was given it. True story.
Is it a real honorary professorship?
No. But it's like...
That would have been cool.
That would have been amazing.
We need an upgrade for Mr. Cronin.
Yes, please. But the thing is, like, it's not a real title, but I actually do have that document from that university where it says we give this blah, blah. And the funny thing is, once in a while, people think it's a real title. It's not. But as it was given to me, I love it so much because a lot of people have kind of like names they give themselves, which sound amazing, but I was given this title and I love it to bits. And yeah, I just had to get that one clarified.
This is something we have in common. I'm also teaching at university for many years now. I think now 6 years. Lately, I've joined with Hochschule Fresenius, which is a group of universities in Germany. They have 40 different sites in Germany, and number 41 actually here in Vienna, which excites me a lot, right? And we do train startups, right, on their journey to get money from investors, right? So literally on the investment part where I'm at home.
Love it.
And also still the program that you already know for business angels, early stage investors. What I find in particularly interesting is there's so many people that have hacked the way you should pitch, right? But not a lot of them really, stick out of the crowd.
True.
You have become such a, I would say, a lighthouse, right? Professor in that space. Why is that? What is the magic that you apply, and why did you stick out of others?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of reasons. I teach my method, the method I learned the hard way. And if you think about it, I am someone who was driven and riddled by stage anxiety, so I'm not a natural. All the techniques I teach are techniques for people who are non-naturals. And it's something I've been doing for more than 10 years. Every week, I think, live and breathe how you can tell a story, how you can present that. I think a lot of pitch trainers and people in that domain kind of do it once in a while, or they are maybe actors or whatever, which is not a bad thing, but they're not entrepreneurs. I am an entrepreneur. Plus, I am someone who does not feel comfortable on stage, and I'm someone who gets really bored easily. Plus, my method has a bit of madness to it, and I'll tell you what it is. When I do one-on-one sessions, I usually have clients, and usually big corporate clients, who say, look, here's all the information you need before, blah, 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 read into it. And I always say, I don't want to know a thing. I don't want to know a thing. So I go into these trainings and I know nothing about them. So I get everything wrong. And we dissect this entire pitch, and then we put it back together again. And then we start from scratch and make it as simple as possible. I think most people just make it too complicated. And I've also understood for myself that you need to get the right, how should I call it, understanding of your audience, an imperfect world. And that's something I try and teach. And I do like adding a bit of humor as well. Apparently, humor goes quite well.
So the methods are...
Oh, and I forgot. I also tried it the extremes part. Sorry to interrupt you there. I actually took it to the extreme because I'm the first person to have pitched in free fall. So I did that together with Red Bull. We were like, let's give this a shot. And we jumped out of an airplane. So the idea was good. I'm interviewing people while going up, how they handle fear and anxiety. Then the idea was that we'd both jump out of the plane. In free fall, we pitch. Then we open the parachutes, and the Q&A was from one parachute to the next. We did that, so I became the first person to have pitched in free fall.
You must have had amazing microphones.
It was mad. That was one of the wildest parts. So microphones were up here. It sounds a bit windy, but it worked. It was crazy.
Cool.
It was really crazy. And the funny thing was, the wildest thing was like, I'd always talked about that before. I always had a picture, and I still have that in my pitch presentations, one of my oldest, of a guy who's about to jump out of the plane. He's like this. So we had that moment. I'm sitting at the door, and I'd always talked about that moment and thought, this is the moment of maximum fear. And there was at that door, no fear. I was like, what's wrong with me? And then we jump, still no fear. And there's like videos and pictures of that. And then we rotate forward. I look between my legs, see this aeroplane suddenly get very small very quickly. And then I got the wildest anxiety ever. I was like full on panic. And the funny thing was, in that moment, all I wanted would be like a big red stop button that would bring me on my couch. And then something really cool happened out of nowhere. Not nowhere, but like the guy was like connected to me. It was a tandem. The guy's hand appeared with a GoPro on it. And my brain saw the GoPro camera and was suddenly like, camera, me know what to do. So I suddenly just started talking. And that's the funny thing was, on that day, I could kind of verify my method because I know, and I think I know, even people having the craziest stage anxiety, when they go on stage, their brain goes ballistic, their emotional center. But as soon as you start talking, your rational center comes alive and starts pushing the emotional center to the side. And that's what happened with me. So I just started talking, and then I became the first person to have pitched in freefall. Later on, we discovered there was someone else who'd done that before, not pitching, but he announced a TV show. But that guy was a Navy SEAL, and yeah, they kind of do stuff for a living.
Likely, the guy was almost as sporty as you are today.
Yeah, but he may have jumped out of planes before. That was my first time.
You think practice matters?
Potentially, but while falling out of planes.
Also for pitches, I guess. How many times should a startup founder practice his pitch or her pitch before going on stage?
It's an interesting question. I cannot give you a number, but what they need to do is they need to know why they go on stage. What that I mean is they need to have a very clear mission. And I have 3 questions I ask at every single pitch training. It's, how much time do you have? Who's your target audience? And what are you trying to achieve? So if someone says, okay, it's 2 minutes with Tim Cook and I need $50 million. Something else where you say, I have 10 minutes, consumer audience, and I'd like them to send me an email. But if they have that clear mission, then they can build a pitch. And if they have that mission in their head and they've understood it, then they can pitch. But the worst thing are people who just have a pitch, they learn off by heart, and they try and do a show without knowing what they're trying to achieve. So to answer that question, it takes a while to understand that. But once they've understood it, they're good to go. And then it could be just a couple of rehearsals. And what I think is so important is that's a technique I also teach, is not to learn text off by heart, but rather have slides or a very clear understanding where you put it into your head, you try and memorize the slides, then have a shower, go for a run. And then you might have like slide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you don't know how it continues. Then go back to your deck and understand why there's no natural flow in your head. Because a pitch should be A, B, C, D. And if there's no flow to it, no flow that makes sense, then you're doing it wrong. If you know what I mean. So it has to be a very clear understanding.
A lot of people stick to the guidelines of like these 10 slides you should have in your pitch deck, like Guy Kawasaki's key slides you should have.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see roughly 2,000 decks a year, right? And I can tell you 90% of the startups present in the same structure, which is convenient on the one hand, right? Because as an investment analyst or as a business angel or VC, you get used to this structure, right? And you really find it easy to assess. Right? Also, decks that are sent contain more text, while you shouldn't have a lot of text when you're on stage, right?
Correct.
So what do you think about strict guidelines, slides you should use, and how to deal with text stage or off stage?
Well, first off, have as little text as possible on stage, ideally like none, maybe like just complicated words you can't pronounce or 1 or 2 words you really want to hit home. And have different decks, one for sending, one for presenting. I think there's a couple elements you need to maintain, but I also think that over time you're going to start changing your pitch deck. You're going to start knowing what works and what doesn't work. And I'm pretty much convinced that you have to start in a very, very, very simple way until the other side's brain switches on. Because probably with you, it's the same. You look at a pitch deck, you're like, page 1, page 2, I'm bored, page 3, well, whatever. Or you go like, page 1, ooh, that's interesting. Page 2, and then more and more you start concentrating on it. So people need to earn your brain power. And that's something people have to understand. So I always say, start simplistic, but very entertaining. And then the deeper you get into a pitch, the more you can add complexity. And that's something a lot of people get wrong. And that's something you have to train. Of course, you need to keep things in there. Like I always love saying, like, have a simple sentence to explain what you do. Very simply state the problem, and then introduce my favorite KPI. Can I swear? Can I say a bad word on this podcast?
I guess so. And if YouTube deletes us, I just fine you.
Okay, good. So my favorite KPI is the BFN, which stands for big fucking number. So I quite like a one-liner, the problem, and then the BFN. So if within the first 20 seconds you say, so this is what we do, this is the problem we solve, and this is why it's a really major thing, then probably people go like, yeah, sounds relevant. People leave that out. Most people tend to, not get interesting early on, then it gets boring. And I get bored very quickly.
Big fucking numbers I like. Yeah, so I swear as well, there's no fine coming up.
And here's the funny thing. All my students, all my clients memorize that KPI because they go like, did he just say big fucking number? I say, yes. And they go like, that's awesome. And like a year later, people are like, dude, I love using the big fucking number. Yeah, because we're all children. And our brain memorizes good stories and our brain memorizes funny stuff a lot better than facts.
Yeah. I, in fact, had that a couple of weeks ago. I was talking with one of my startups. They do digital signatures.
Yeah.
Like, you know them, Sproof, right?
Yeah.
They have a good number, right? I think close to 1,000 now corporate, small, medium-sized enterprises as clients. But they have done millions in signatures, right?
Awesome.
Every month.
Awesome.
Right? So this big fucking number game, I told him, honestly, speaking about your company, bring out this big fucking number about the single signatures. Who cares that you have 300, 500, 800 clients? One of them might be gigantic. Who cares, right? Yeah. What matters is how many people interact with your product day in and day out, right?
Traction is king.
Right. And the big numbers is what triggers, right? And it catches attention. And then like, whoa, how can this be that I'm not involved in this company?
Exactly.
How can this be that a European tech company is good enough, right, to actually have such traction? Which leads me to my next point. You see so many international entrepreneurs. People always say in Europe, well, we have a cultural discount, right? We just can't sell like the Americans can. In my humble opinion, they should also look at Arabs, Indians, Japanese. These guys are rock stars on stage. What do you think? Where is Europe in comparison? And what do we need to do better?
Well, from the pitching point of view, it's interesting. There's a huge difference culturally. There's a huge difference. Like Americans, Israelis, they're on fire. That's a cultural thing. We in Europe, we've been taught to be humble. I think that's great on a personal level. But one has to understand in a pitch, it's not about being humble, but it's getting something else sorted out. It's about two things, actually three things. A pitch is for me a conversation starter to earn time and build trust. And the point is the earning time is about you have a 2-minute pitch to earn one cool Q&A question. The Q&A question is great to earn a 10-minute talk afterwards, to have a 1-hour call afterwards, to have a 3-day workshop, and to finally IPO. And the trust part is something where it's about understanding why can you actually deliver what you promise. And that's about not being humble, but saying, hey, in the last year, I've seen 10,000 this, I've done that, we have so and so much million revenue, blah, blah, blah. And there's something Europeans like holding back. We like hiding a lot behind tech. We like being very factual, which is great on a personal level, but they need to understand you're selling. And a lot of us Europeans have that mindset that we assume people are going to see our greatness within the tech. We're going to buy it because it's a superior product. We need to sell it. We need to learn how to sell. And we need to understand that selling and earning money are not bad things, but they're really good things. And I think on top of that is a third factor that, especially in university, we kind of have that mindset that it's more about writing papers and so on to create reach and not about building companies to create reach and impact. And that's something we have to change, and we're changing it slowly, but it's still quite far.
Would you say that Europeans have inferior products or do they have superior products?
I think we can't see it per se, but I think we are highly educated. We have very, very good skill sets. We're very smart people. And we have some standout products. But we're not very good at selling our stories. We're not very good at telling our stories.
So we have superior products, inferior sellers.
In many cases. I mean, there's some great examples. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Bitpanda boys. You know, for example, look at them. I mean, they've built an amazing product.
Also, Planradar. I just
awesome.
visited Ibrahim Iman in Saudi Arabia. We met. It's always so inspiring to speak with him, right? Yeah. And it's amazing how they're crushing the market, right?
I think of Red Bull. That's just another great. I mean, there's so many great stories, but what we kind of hold back on making them the rock stars they are. Like we celebrate footballers and we celebrate whatever else singers, but we don't celebrate these entrepreneurs as much. You go like, look at them. Of course, they have a lot of money. Ugh. But we don't say like, hey, how come Taylor Swift earns a couple billions? Then we go like, fair enough, good on her. But if an entrepreneur earns a couple millions or whatever, we go like,
likely a crook.
Yeah, of course. At least that, or he's inherited it, but probably not made it, or she.
This is something, it reminds me that, again, a parallel what we have in common. us trying to unite all those investors from all around the world, right? Bringing them to World Venture Forum as one of our signature events. And now we're establishing a nonprofit foundation to actually promote investment and co-investment internationally.
That's awesome.
Right? For innovation and technology to make the future better. Now you start with a different angle, also with Austrian Startups, forming a foundation where I'm keen also to support. We still have a catch-up outstanding on that one, where you want to promote entrepreneurship really from the bottom up, and also change the entrepreneurial mindset and the perception, right, in our society, I would say, right, in a broader understanding, because entrepreneurship in Austria is, and in Europe in general, is rather a niche, right? It's for those high risk takers that also can live with, I would say, the little likelihood of success and then the blame game that falls at them, right? And you want to change that. Is that right?
That's right. We've been working on that avidly, and probably the most important thing is, entrepreneurship is like any types of sports. Like you can be the most talented race car driver in the world. If you take Lewis Hamilton and put him in a go-kart for the first time, age 25, he's probably not going to be world champion, right? And think about it, when most people have touch points with entrepreneurship, probably it's in university, maybe later. But imagine you take one of those and have first touch points in school. That's a lot better. And that's something we're trying to shape. At the same time, we've also understood that real impact is something, you need a bit of money for that. You need long-term money for that. And that's why we started a foundation, just to drive that change forward. Because it's a change we can't expect politics to make. We know politics doesn't move fast enough, isn't aggressively enough. And that's something we're trying to shift long-term. Because we need to instill one core message. And for me, entrepreneurship is about seeing a problem, validating that problem, and solving it. And that's something every one of us has in it. You see something, this upsets me, you go like, how much does it upset you? A lot or not so much? Not so much. Good. If you go like a lot, you go, okay, next step. Has someone else found a solution for it? Yes or no? No. Ooh, do you think others have the same problem? Yes or no? And then suddenly you get to a point where you go like, look, we have something that really upsets you or something that really interests you. You've found others who have the same thing, but there's no solution.
So let's fix it.
That's what we do. Entrepreneurship is not about, just making money or something. It's about doing something you believe in and changing it. And I think that's the greatest skill set. And that's something people need to learn, as simple as that. And that's something you can teach anyone in as little as 10, 20 seconds. We just say, look, there's a problem. Does it upset you? Yes, no. Do you know others who have the same thing? Yes, no. Is there a solution? Yes, no. Go. And once you get people to that point, all the rest they're going to get. I mean, there's so much amazing stuff out there on YouTube, for example, where you can say, look, good. Once you're interested enough, start getting it in. And I think that's the way we can really drive change forward. At least I hope.
That's actually a really, really good final sentence, right? I think we're almost at the end of the time. If there's one last remark you want to make, we can do that. Otherwise, people can reach out to you, follow you on your YouTube channel, which is
The Pitch Professor. Daniel Cronin, The Pitch Professor, everything on pitching.
Yeah. So I highly recommend to subscribe to our channel and Daniel's right thereafter.
Yes, please.
Or together at the same time, if you can do that on 2 laptops simultaneously. Second, you're on LinkedIn, hyperactive.
Yes.
Right? Do you answer if people write you?
Sure.
Do they need an email address to reach out to you? So that's an easy one, right? Get contacted with him. And I'm sure we'll see each other on one of those international events where you're speaking and I'm humbly listening. It was great having you, Daniel. As always, very inspiring. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and please don't forget to subscribe and tune in for the next episode.